Hey everyone, want to go over a little bit of the conversion of customary units. This will be for lessons 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, but will also be valuable throughout. I wanted to give an overall view of some of the skills because some of you are a little confused still, and hopefully this can reinforce with everybody else. All right, so getting started, first of all, customary units are what we use in this country, United States. They don't always make the most sense. They seem kind of random. There are some pretty cool historical accounts, rather, dealing with why there are 12 inches in a foot, or why we break a gallon into 4 quarts, and then again into 2 pints, and then again into 2 cups, and then that into 8 ounces. But right now, we're not even going to so much worry about that or even memorizing any of that. You're not going to be expected to memorize it. I've given you guys some tricks, some things that can help you because they're useful in your own life. But if you need to use a conversion sort of cheat sheet, I would have allowed that in school. We'll allow it now for anything that needs to happen. And that'll be pushed out to you along with this video. But let's look at something, and we'll start with units of distance here. And you can see that I'm looking to see how many inches would be in 9 yards. Now, a lot of people are probably thinking at this point, well, I'm either going to multiply or divide. And that is true if you have a good grasp of this. But I like the first question for you to ask, not so much am I going to multiply or divide, is this unit larger or smaller than this unit? Well, if you're familiar, a yard is 3 feet or 36 inches. So it is larger than an inch, right? So you have 36 inches in every yard. That means that we can do one of two things. And if you have somebody who's helping you at home, they might be telling you, just take this number and multiply by 36. That'll get you the correct answer. There's a trick here, though. And the trick is not something I'm going to show you to help you. It's something that's kind of tripping you up. Because if you're finding that this is difficult, what's happening is as this unit gets smaller, the number gets larger, right? So when we look at the answer to this, when we actually find it, you'll realize that this number is going to be smaller and the unit is larger. This number is going to be larger and the unit is smaller. The reason is it takes a larger number of a smaller unit to go the same distance. So when we find this, the one thing I want to stress is that these numbers are going to represent equal quantities. So 9 yards will equal a certain number of inches that is the exact same distance, even though the number and the units are different. Okay, so yes, I could just multiply this number by 36. And if you do that, you end up with 324 inches, right? And all I did was say 9 times 36, and you get your answer. But the book represents another way to do it, and what it is using a conversion rate. So a conversion rate is just another type of rate, and you're going to use the same information you did, that there are 36 inches in a yard. So you would write 36 inches in 1 yard. Now, technically, this is also a conversion rate. 1 yard to 36 inches. But the reason that this one won't help us right now is because when I put that next to 9 yards, right? If I put it next to 9 yards, I'm not just multiplying, right? And every number is a fraction over 1. So 9 yards times 1 over 1 yard times, or over 36 inches. What's happening here is I'm not just multiplying the numbers, I'm multiplying the units as well. So I'm going to end up with yards squared over inches, yards squared divided by inches. That doesn't make any sense. So I don't want to use this conversion rate. I want to use this conversion rate. Because what will happen is it'll actually cause me to check across, right? Cross cancel, cancel before you multiply the units, and you'll be left with the correct unit. So 36 inches is on the top, right? And if you think back to what we did first, right, you probably have someone in your house telling you, just multiply it. Well, the reason you're multiplying is because it's on top. So 36 over 1 inches, yards, and now times 9 over 1 yards. And remember, this has no unit because it's just it's turning this number into a fraction, 9 divided by 1. It's like an identity property thing. Okay, so equals, you end up with 9 over 36, but first, yards times yards, or those cancel out. You have one in the denominator, one in the numerator. You're left with just inches, so your answer is in inches, and as we saw, it's going to be 324 inches. And there are 324 inches in a yard. in 9 yards. Now, if you're looking at this, remember, 324 is larger than 9, but yards are larger than inches. Bigger unit, smaller number. Smaller unit, bigger number. So that can help answer some of the questions about, is this going to get larger? Am I going to be multiplying? Is it going to get smaller? All right, let's take a look at another example. Let's say we want to go to, and we'll jump lessons here, we'll go to units of capacity. We'll go to customary capacity. So I've probably given you this before, A224, right? It's a nonsense word I made up that helps you remember that there are 8 ounces in a cup, 2 cups in a pint, 2 pints in a quart, 4 quarts in a gallon. So obviously they're not spelled like that, but it's a nonsense word. Hopefully it'll help you remember. So now, if you need to go from ounces to gallons, you can have that number memorized. There is a conversion factor for it as well, or you can convert first to pints, then to quarts, then to gallons, right? And you can sort of snake your way down this list. Right. So let's say we have, and we'll go larger this time. So last time when we went from a larger unit to a smaller unit. This time I'm going to start with a smaller unit and go larger. So let's say I have 16 ounces and I want to know how many pints. Think about this. Is this number going to get larger or smaller? Okay. 16 ounces. Ounces is the smallest unit I have here. Ounces are smaller than pints. So that means that smaller unit, larger number. So this number, whatever it's going to be, is going to be smaller than 16. So I'm probably going to be dividing. But let's find a conversion rate to make it make sense. So first I take 16 ounces and put it over 1. I can do that every time. Okay? I'm going to multiply. I always multiply by conversion rates. And now I just need to find which one I want. So first look for if I have ounces to pints. I see ounces here. I see pints here. Now I see cups and pints. So I'm going to have to go first to ounces to cups and then cups to pints. So let's try this. So you can see 16 ounces over 1. We end up with 8 ounces equals 1 cup. Do I want to put the 8 ounces on the top or the 8 ounces on the bottom? Well, since I know I want this number to get smaller, I'm going to put the 8 ounces on the bottom. And another way is I know I want the ounces to cross out, right? So if I have ounces up here, I don't want ounces squared. That doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to cross out ounces, ounces. I end up with 16 times 1 is 16 over 8. And the unit I'm left with is cups. And you can see that I have 1 cup, or 16 over 8 actually reduces down to 2. Remember, this bar means divided by. And then my answer is 2 cups. But I wanted to know pints. So I come back to my conversion rate, and now I have 2 cups equals, hey, 1 pint. Sometimes the conversion rate answers for you. You're not going to multiply by 2 over 1. It doesn't make any sense. You're done. So your answer is, in fact, 1 pint. Okay? And yes, 16 is larger than 1, so your question's answered there. This works the same way for units of mass. We don't use pounds for mass. We use kilograms for mass, so technically units of weight. So if you are starting with 3,000 pounds, LBS is pounds, and you want to know how many ounces it is, you're going to have to, and this is a different ounce, right? This would be fluid ounces, the ounces we're talking about here. This is ounces. There are 16 ounces in 1 pound. And you can see that we need another conversion. So start with 3,000 over 1, always label, times something over something. We'll get there in a second. Now ask yourself, which unit is larger? Pounds is larger. So which number needs to be larger? Larger unit, smaller number. That means this number needs to get larger, which means we should be multiplying. Again, I want the answer in ounces. So wherever I put my pounds, that has to be on the bottom. So here's 1 pound, and I know I wrote LBS, but we'll just keep that the same. It would actually be LB. And then here I'm going to have 16. So cross that out, and I'm going to end up with 3,000 times 16. Seems like a large number, but take those 3 zeros, just move them to the side for a second. Don't forget about them. You're going to need them. Looks like the alien from Toy Story. And then you end up with 16 times 3, which is a much easier multiplication problem, which, if you know your math facts, is 48. Bring those zeros back, it's actually 48,000. So you end up with 48,000 lbs, or pounds, okay? There is one other thing I want to show you in this video, and that's going to involve going back to the units of capacity. Because there are so many units of capacity, you'll sometimes see things represented as multiple units, right? And this happens with pounds too, right? You might be familiar with this even in inches and feet, right? So you might say, I'm 4'5", I'm 5'4". That means you're 5 feet 4 inches. It's not 5.4, right? Because it's a very different fraction. It's actually 4 out of 12 in the terms of inches if you're saying 5'4". So when we're here, when we're dealing with these units right there, we actually have something that's a little bit different. And let's say I have 42 ounces. And again, that's fluid ounces. And I want to know how many cups and how many ounces. Now, unless you know exactly what's going on here, you won't know that there's always a leftover. But basically what I'm saying is you can represent your remainder, right? If you haven't completed a whole larger unit, because cups is a larger unit, if you haven't completed a whole larger unit, you can represent those either as a fraction of a cup. You could say half a cup, a third of a cup. Those exist. Or you can say it's this many ounces, because that is a smaller unit. You can then represent it. The same way you would say, I'm 5'4", 5 feet 4 inches. You could also say you're 5 1/3 feet tall. Anyway, 42 ounces, we're going to do the same thing. Ounces to cups, okay. 42 over 1 ounces. And now I'm going to multiply that by, I have 8 ounces and 1 cup. So think, is this number going to get larger or smaller? It's going to get smaller because cups is a larger unit. So I definitely want to divide. Plus I want ounces on the bottom so they can cancel out. And I know I have 8 ounces and 1 cup. So I'm going to end up with 42 over 8. 2 over 8 cups. Now 42/8 of a cup is mathematically an answer, but we can kind of manipulate that so it makes a little bit more sense. Okay, 42/8 of a cup, you're going to ask yourself, how many times does 8 go into 42? The answer is 5 with a remainder of 2. So 5 2/8 or 5 1/4 is a perfectly acceptable answer. But this 1/4 cannot go right there. No, it doesn't work like that. You have 5 1/4 cups. You don't have 5 cups and 1/4 ounces. You have to come back to this original fraction. I'm going to move him over here. Because you actually have 5 cups and 2 out of your next 8 pieces. And think about it. If you had a graphic representation and you had, and I know I had lines in here, so that got a little confusing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces made up a cup. Each one of those we could call ounce, right? So every time we filled one of those up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that's a cup. You did that 5 times and you had 2 left over. Your answer is actually 5 cups, 2 ounces. So to put it in mathematical terms, your fractional remainder is actually the next smallest unit, as long as you are converting from those units. So when you're putting ounces into cups, that leftover remainder can be represented as ounces. The same can be done with pounds and ounces. The same can be done with feet and inches. It can be done with yards and feet and inches, right? You could say 3 feet, or 1 yard, 1 foot, and 3 inches, if you so desired. Some of these are more common. The reason I'm showing you in customary capacity is because it's one of the more common areas where you'll have it. All right, I hope this was helpful and didn't confuse you further. If you do have any questions about it or request a specific example, please let me know. And again, check alongside this video for a quick cheat sheet for some of these numbers, which I'm not asking you to memorize, but the more you know, the better it will be. All right, guys, have a good one.